Clara's arthritic fingers brushed dust off Wuthering Heights, her late husband's bookmark still wedged near Chapter 7. 60 years old, London drizzle fogging window, she'd meant to donate this copy years ago. But vibes shifted when she spotted scribbles in margins, his terrible poetry, a grocery list, eggs, milk, heart meds. Downstairs, her bookshop's community swap buzzed with silver-haired regulars debating Pride and Prejudice over chipped mugs. Grief had carved Clara hollow. Clara's arthritic fingers brushed dust off Wuthering Heights, its spine cracked like her own knees after 60 winters. She'd bought this copy decades ago, tucked inside a love letter from someone whose face now blurred like smudged ink. Grief had settled into her bones quieter than novels' yellowed pages, but today, for first time since funeral, she carried it outside. London's autumn air smelled of damp pavement and possibility. Indie Bookshop on corner hosted a grief book club. Bring a story that haunted you, leave with one that heals. Vibes were less pity party, more potluck of souls. Clara hesitated door, gripping her book like a life raft. What if she drowned them all in her sadness? Grief wasn't a storm to weather but a tide, relentless and sneaky, leaving seaweed in your shoes when you least expected it. Inside, mismatched armchairs cradled women of every age, their hands busy with tea and dog-eared paperbacks. A 30-something with neon nails swapped a memoir for a mystery, an octogenarian in a moth-eaten cardigan chuckled over Bridget Jones. No one flinched when Clara's clumsy step sent a biscuit tin clattering. She placed Wuthering Heights on swap table. Its weight lifted something in her chest, not all once, but like steam off hot soup. When she reached for a replacement, her palm met a battered copy of Pride and Prejudice, its margins scribbled with notes in a familiar, looping hand. Her breath hitched. By closing time, Clara hadn't solved grief. But she'd folded a corner on a new page. Clara's arthritic fingers brushed dust off Wuthering Heights, its spine cracked like her own knees after decades of London winters. She hadn't meant to start a revolution, just find a reason to leave her flat since James passed. But grief had a funny way of nudging people into corners, then tossing them a lifeline disguised as an old novel. Rain tapped against bookshop window, as she hesitated by community board, squinting a flyer for a book swap for broken hearts. A younger woman, early 40s, neon pink glasses clashing with her librarian vibes, caught Clara's stare. First rule of Grief Club, she whispered conspiratorially, we don't talk about just grief. That's how Clara found herself clutching dog-eared paperbacks in a circle of mismatched chairs, surrounded by women who'd lost parents, partners, even pets. Each book they swapped carried invisible sticky notes. This one made me ugly cry in Waitrose. Skip chapter 7 unless you fancy a meltdown. Laughter bubbled up unexpectedly when someone admitted using Pride and Prejudice as a coaster for gin. Real twist. That battered copy of Wuthering Heights became their mascot. Passed from hand to hand, its margins filled with underlines and chocolate smudges, it turned into a living diary of their healing. Clara, who'd once winced term self-help, now scribbled affirmations between Bronte's angst. Months in, she tripped over her own walking stick trying to shelve donations. Grace had never been her strong suit, and landed beside a first edition of Middlemarch. Group gasped. That's vibes, declared Pink Glasses. Sometimes you fall into magic. By summer, Clara led a spin-off club local hospice. Not a lonely widow, but a conductor of stories, showing others how to fold grief into pages until it softened edges. And if she occasionally hid romance novels behind classics. Well, even healers needed guilty pleasures. Clara's arthritic fingers brushed dust off Wuthering Heights, its spine cracked like her own knees after decades of London rain. 60 years of living had taught her books outlasted people, but grief had a way of rewriting endings. She'd bought this copy with Malcolm, back when Charing Cross Road still smelled of pipe tobacco and ink. Now it sat in a cardboard box labeled Donate, wedged between a toaster and his moth-eaten scarves. Community book swaps weren't her scene. Too much chatter, too many paperbacks smelling of lavender and false optimism. But Flyer Corner Shop had snagged her attention. Read your way back. No therapy speak, no pastel fonts. Just a sketch of an open book with a teapot steaming beside it. Vibes more pub quiz than support group. She arrived late, clutching novel like a shield. Inside, mismatched chairs circled a stack of books taller than her pension. A woman with neon reading glasses waved her over. We're swapping tragedies tonight. Yours looks well loved. Clara hesitated. Letting go of book felt like losing Malcolm again. But then she spotted Rebecca on pile, dog-eared, coffee-stained, exactly how she'd read at 16. Someone else's grief, someone else's survival. By winter, she'd swapped her way through Bronte, Du Maurier, even a doggerel poetry collection that made her snort into her Earl Grey. Group never asked for her story, but they noticed when she forgot to laugh Pride and Prejudice as Mr. Collins. One rainy Thursday, a retired librarian slid Secret Garden toward her. Try this. Less Moors, More Miracles. Clara read it in one night, stubbornly ignoring how ending unspooled something tight in her chest. Next meeting, she brought Malcolm's old hiking guidebook, annotated with his terrible jokes about Yorkshire pubs. Swapping tragedies, she announced, but keeping punchlines. Novel had been her armor. Turned out, sharing it was first page of something new. Clara's arthritic fingers brushed dust off Wuthering Heights, its spine cracked with decades of heartache. Grief had clung like yellowed pages since Henry passed, but today, sunlight pooled on faded ink, whispering possibility. London's damp air hummed outside her flat, same as always, yet something fizzed in her chest. That dog-eared novel wasn't just a relic, it was a dare. She hauled it to Primrose Hill Books, where Tuesday afternoons meant chatter over Earl Grey and scones. Regulars nodded as she entered, but woman bypassed her usual armchair. Instead, she clambered onto a wobbly stool, ignoring knees that protested, and slapped book onto counter. Starting a club, she announced. 4 stories that stitch us back together. Silence. Then Marjorie, shop's perpetually skeptical manager, arched an eyebrow. Bit niche, love, she grinned. Exactly. By week 3, her had swelled to 12, widows, divorcees, a bloke who'd lost his bulldog, all clutching well-loved novels like talismans. They swapped dog-eared copies in a ritual she dubbed shelf therapy, each inscription a breadcrumb of someone else's survival. But her masterstroke? A community shelf near register, take a book. Leave a story. Locals began stuffing paperbacks into gaps, scribbling notes in margins. A teen left perks of being a wallflower with page 72 saved me scrawled inside. Then came twist. A blogger snapped shelf mid-swap, Clara's silver bob bent over a tattered Joy Luck Club, fingers tracing another reader's tear stains. Post went viral, shelf therapy, flooding shop with strangers clutching their own battered books. Marjorie gaped Q snaking down block. Bloody hell, she muttered, handing woman a fresh cuppa. You've made grief trendy. Clara sipped, hiding a smirk behind rim. Let them call it a movement. To her, it was simpler, stories were life rafts, and she'd just thrown a whole fleet into storm. That night, she opened Wuthering Heights to Henry's old margin note, Clara, my wild heart, and pressed it to her chest. 60 years young, and world still had plot twists. This was her start. Clara's arthritic fingers brushed dust off Wuthering Heights, its spine cracked like her heart after losing Jim. But grief, she learned, wasn't a solo read, it begged for margin notes in others' handwriting. So she lugged that battered novel to a dim-lit London bookshop, where misfit mourners gathered under a flickering book swap sign. Week 1, 5 strangers, mismatched mugs, and a German widow who sobbed into Eat Pray Love. Clara nudged dog-eared pages toward her, whispering, "Skip past a chapter, overrated." Laughter unspooled tension like a rogue bookmark. By month 3, their club had swelled to 20, divorcees clutching wild, widowers with Tuesdays with Maury, all trading stories with spines as bent as their pasts. Clara's odd habit. She tucked wildflowers between pages of returned books, petals pressing hope into prose. One drizzle-grey afternoon, a teen clutching her mum's tattered Pride and Prejudice wandered in. Clara guided her to a squashy armchair, swapping Austen for a doe-eared Joy Luck Club. "Grief's a library," she murmured. "Borrow till you're ready to shelve it." Girl left hugging book, a daisy poking from its pages. Now, Clara's club spills beyond bookshops, park benches, Zoom screens, even a rogue meeting in a laundromat. Tragedy pairs well with fabric softener. That old Wuthering Heights. Rebound with community scribbles in its margins. 60 never tasted so alive. Grab a book, swap your story. Grief reads better together.